You'll figure it out. That's what my daughter-in-law, Brianna, said while rolling her champagne-colored suitcase toward the priority line like she was late for a photo shoot instead of abandoning her husband's mother. Didn't even look back. My son, Caleb, just pushed his sunglasses up on his nose and followed her. No eye contact. No hug. No "you good, Mom?" Nothing. And just like that, I was standing alone in the middle of Nashville International Airport with a purse on my shoulder and a one-way ticket to somewhere I suddenly didn't want to go. The airport was loud, rolling suitcases clacking against tile, kids whining about snacks, overhead announcements echoing like they were bouncing off my skull. Everybody moving fast. Everybody headed somewhere. Except me. "You've got your phone," Brianna had said a minute earlier when the airline agent told me there wasn't a return flight under my name. "Sell it if you have to. That should cover a bus ticket." She said it like she was offering helpful advice. Like she'd just suggested I grab an umbrella in case it rained. Caleb didn't correct her. Didn't even blink. I felt something cold slide down my spine, not panic, not yet. Just this slow, sinking realization. They never planned on bringing me back. The trip was supposed to be a healing getaway. That's what they called it. A beach week in Florida. Sun, sand, grandkids running around. Fresh air for the widow. My husband, Frank, had passed 2 months earlier. Stroke. Quick. Brutal. 41 years of marriage gone in the time it takes for a coffee mug to hit tile. They said I needed to get out of the house. "You can't just sit there alone, Mom," Caleb told me. "Dad wouldn't want that." That line right there? That's the one that hooked me. Because when you're grieving, you'll cling to anything that sounds like purpose. I even chipped in for the flights. Sold the diamond band Frank gave me on our 15th anniversary. Not the engagement ring, I couldn't do that, but the band. Took it to a pawn shop on Gallatin Road and smiled while my heart cracked in half. "It's a group effort," Brianna had said, flashing those perfect teeth. "We're all pitching in." Funny thing though, I never saw the bookings. Never saw confirmation emails. I just trusted them. Because that's what moms do. At the check-in counter, the airline lady frowned at her screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not seeing a return flight for you." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that can't be right. I'm with the Turner family. There should be 7 of us." She clicked again. Her eyebrows pulled together. "There are 6 returning passengers." 6. Not 7. I walked over to Caleb and Brianna, who were standing by the Starbucks laughing at something on her phone. "Hey," I said softly. "They're saying I don't have a ticket home." Caleb shifted his weight. Scratched the back of his neck. "Yeah, so, we figured you might want to stay longer. You've got more flexibility than we do." "Stay where?" I asked. Brianna sighed like I was being difficult. "You're retired. You can figure it out. Flights are crazy expensive right now." My mouth went dry. "I didn't pack for longer," I said. "There are stores," she shrugged. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. They'd booked first-class seats for themselves. I saw the tags on their luggage. Priority stickers. Extra legroom. Meanwhile, my name had been erased from the return like I was an afterthought. Or worse. A burden. They started toward security. "Text us when you figure it out," Brianna tossed over her shoulder. And that was it. No hug. No apology. No shame. I stood there long after they disappeared past TSA. People brushed past me. A toddler dropped a stuffed animal near my feet. Somewhere, a flight to Orlando started final boarding. My chest felt tight, but I refused to cry in public. I've lived too long to give strangers that show. Instead, I walked to a bench near gate C18 and sat down slow. Back straight. Chin up. They thought I'd panic. Thought I'd beg. Thought I'd call Caleb crying and ask him to come back. But here's what they didn't know. Tucked inside my purse was a small white envelope Frank and I started years ago. We called it our Oh Hell No Fund. Emergency cash. For when life pulled something dirty. I slipped it open. $960. Not a fortune. But it was mine. I pulled out my phone, not to call Caleb. I scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in years. Martin Hayes, attorney. An old friend of Frank's. He answered on the third ring. Mrs. Turner? It's been a while. It has, I said, steady as steel. I need to update my will. Today. There was a pause on the line. Are you all right? I looked up at the departure board. Caleb's flight blinked on time. Oh, I said calmly. I'm better than all right. Because by the time their plane touched down in Florida, I wouldn't just be the mom they left behind at the airport. I'd be the woman who made sure they never forgot it. And trust me. That part? They never saw coming. Before I tell you what I did after that phone call, you need to understand something. People don't wake up one morning and decide to cut their only child out of their will. That kind of decision? It's built brick by brick. Moment by moment. Silence by silence. And for me, it started the morning Frank died. It was an ordinary Tuesday. The kind where nothing feels historic. The sun was barely up, and he was in the kitchen humming off-key like he always did when he thought nobody was listening. Some old country tune from back in the day. I was in the bedroom folding laundry when I heard the coffee mug hit the floor. Not a crash. Just a hard, hollow thud. I walked into the hallway and saw him there. Flat on his back. Eyes open but empty. One hand curled against his chest like he was holding something that wasn't there anymore. Frank? I said. I already knew. The ambulance came fast. Lights flashing red against our living room walls like some kind of cruel party we never signed up for. A young paramedic squeezed my shoulder and said words I don't remember, but I remember the tone. Final. At the hospital they said it was a massive stroke. Instant. He didn't feel pain. That was supposed to comfort me. 41 years of marriage gone in under 4 minutes. We met when I was 19 and stubborn. He was 22 and convinced he could fix anything with duct tape and determination. We built our house from scratch in Tennessee. Painted every wall ourselves. Argued over cabinet handles. Raised Caleb in that living room with hand-me-down furniture and Saturday morning pancakes. Frank wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. But he was steady. And when he left, the steady left with him. The house got quiet in a way that felt wrong. Not peaceful quiet. Not cozy quiet. Empty quiet. His boots still sat by the door. His reading glasses were on the end table. His recliner still had the dent where he leaned back every night to watch the news and pretend he wasn't asleep by 8:30. I didn't move anything. Moving it would make it real. The funeral was small. He wouldn't have wanted a crowd. It rained, of course. The kind of cold rain that doesn't pour, just lingers. Caleb cried. Brianna dabbed at her eyes carefully so she wouldn't smudge her makeup. Afterward, the casseroles showed up. Church ladies with tight hugs and heavy dishes. For a week, I didn't have to cook. For a week, people checked in. Then they stopped. That's the thing about grief nobody tells you. The world moves on way faster than your heart does. I started sleeping on Frank's side of the bed because it still smelled like him. I'd sit in his recliner and run my fingers along the armrest like it might answer back. That's when Caleb started coming by more often. "Mom, you can't stay locked up in here," he said one afternoon, standing in the doorway like he didn't quite want to step all the way inside my sadness. Brianna stood behind him, arms folded. "We were thinking," she added smoothly, "you should come to Florida with us for spring break." I blinked. "Florida?" "Beach trip," Caleb said. "Sunshine. The kids would love it. You need fresh air." Brianna leaned in with that sympathetic smile she wears like a badge. "Frank wouldn't want you sitting alone." That line. That's the one that cracked me open. Because when you're grieving, you're not just sad. You're scared. Scared that if you stop moving, you'll disappear too. So I said yes. I even offered to help pay. I had some savings Frank insisted I keep in my own account just in case. I told them I'd cover my ticket. "You don't have to," Caleb said. But he didn't argue hard. Brianna said flights were pricey. I told her I understood. I remember standing in my bedroom packing. I chose my best cardigan. Slipped a small framed photo of Frank into my carry-on. Told his picture, "Guess we're going to the beach, honey." For the first time since the funeral, I felt something that almost resembled hope. That's what makes what happened at that airport hurt the most. It wasn't just that they left me. It was that they left me right when I'd started to believe I still mattered. But here's the part they didn't understand. Frank and I didn't just build a house together. We built safeguards. We planned for emergencies. And when Caleb and Brianna walked away at that gate, they thought they'd stranded a grieving old woman. What they actually did was wake her up. And when I stepped into that taxi outside the airport, I wasn't running after them. I was heading somewhere that would change their lives forever. You think being left at an airport is the worst part? Oh no. That was just the beginning. I didn't run after them. Didn't shout. Didn't cause a scene. That's what they probably expected, that I'd panic, start crying, beg Caleb to fix it. That I'd be too embarrassed to stand on my own. Instead, I walked straight out of Nashville International Airport like I had somewhere important to be. Because I did. The automatic doors slid open and that Tennessee heat wrapped around me like a wet blanket. Planes roared overhead. Cars lined up at the curb, drivers half honking, half yelling. I raised my hand and flagged down the first yellow cab I saw. The driver leaned over. "Where to, ma'am?" I hadn't said the address out loud in years. "Hayes and Carter Law Office," I replied. "Jefferson Street." He nodded and pulled into traffic. As we drove, I stared out the window at streets I'd known most of my adult life. Strip malls. Gas stations. That diner Frank loved that still hasn't updated its sign since 1988. Everything looked the same. But I didn't feel the same. Inside my purse was that envelope, $960 from what Frank used to call our "Oh Hell No" fund. We started it after his first minor heart scare 10 years ago. "Just in case life gets cute," he joked, slipping a 50 into the tin we kept in the closet. We added to it slowly over time. Tax refunds. Birthday money we didn't spend. Spare cash from side jobs he picked up after retirement. It wasn't a fortune. But it meant something. It meant independence. The cab stopped in front of a brick building with gold lettering on the door. Hayes and Carter. I paid the driver and stepped out. For a second, I just stood there. My reflection in the glass door looked older than I remembered. Smaller. But my eyes? They were steady. Inside, the office smelled like paper and coffee. A receptionist with bright red glasses looked up. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment with Martin Hayes," I said. I didn't. Not officially. But when you call and say, "I need to update my will today," people make room. A few minutes later, Martin came out of his office. He'd aged since I last saw him. More gray. Slower step. But the same sharp eyes. "Mrs. Turner," he said gently. "I was sorry to hear about Frank." "Thank you," I replied. "I need to make some changes." He led me into his office and closed the door. We sat across from each other, his desk between us like a line in the sand. "All right," he said, folding his hands. "What kind of changes are we talking about?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to remove my son and his wife from my will. Completely." He blinked once. "That's significant." "I'm aware." He studied my face carefully. "Are you under any pressure? Has something happened?" I let out a small breath. "They left me at the airport with a one-way ticket this morning." His eyebrows shot up. "They what?" I told him everything. The missing return flight. The suitcase they'd checked without telling me. The way Brianna suggested I sell my phone if I needed bus fare. I didn't cry while telling it. I was past that. When I finished, the room felt heavy. Martin leaned back slowly. "That could qualify as financial exploitation," he said. "Especially if you've contributed money under false pretenses." "I gave it willingly," I said. "But I was misled." He nodded. "Intent matters." I leaned forward. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want protection. I want to make sure they never treat me like that again. And I want my estate to go somewhere it will actually do good." He tapped his pen against a legal pad. "Do you have something in mind?" I did. A few months before Frank passed, I'd picked up a pamphlet at the community center. A nonprofit that helped seniors who'd been abandoned or financially mistreated by family. I pulled it out of my purse and slid it across the desk. "Silver Harbor Foundation," I said. "I want everything to go there." He read the pamphlet carefully. "That's a major change," he said. "I know." We went line by line through my old will. The one Frank and I signed together years ago. Everything to each other. Then to Caleb. It had felt automatic back then. Of course it would go to him. He was our only child. Now, hearing Martin read Caleb's name aloud felt different. Like a name that didn't belong in my future anymore. "Are you sure?" Martin asked one last time. I thought about Gate C-18. About Brianna's shrug. About Caleb's silence. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm sure." He started drafting the revisions. And with every word he typed, something inside me shifted. Not bitterness. Clarity. By the time I left his office, the sun was lower in the sky. I held a folder under my arm, temporary copies until the final version was notarized. I felt lighter. Not because I'd cut my son out. But because I'd chosen myself. As I walked back toward the curb to call another cab, my phone buzzed. "Caleb. Incoming call." I stared at his name flashing on the screen. Once upon a time, I would have answered before the second ring. Now? I let it ring. And when it stopped, I smiled slightly. Because for the first time that day, I wasn't the one left waiting. Caleb called 16 times that afternoon. 16. I counted. The first 3 came while I was still sitting in the law office parking lot, staring at the revised draft of my will. The next 5 came while I was in the back seat of another cab heading downtown. By the time I checked into a modest hotel near the river, he was up to 12. No voicemail. That told me everything. If this had been about concern, he would have left one. If this had been about love, he would have said, "Mom, are you okay?" Instead, it was just ringing. Over and over. Panic doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes it just keeps redialing. I checked into the hotel under my full name, Eleanor Grace Turner. Not mom. Not widow. Not Caleb's mother. Just me. The front desk clerk smiled. Staying long? Just long enough, I replied. My room was simple. Neutral carpet. Crisp white sheets. A window that overlooked the Cumberland River. I set my purse down and finally let myself sit on the edge of the bed. That's when the quiet hit. Not the hollow, aching quiet from after Frank died. This was different. This quiet felt like space. My phone buzzed again. Caleb. I flipped it over. Let him wonder. Around 6 that evening, a text came through from Brianna. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. I actually laughed out loud. Ridiculous? Being left at an airport with no return ticket was ridiculous. Telling your grieving mother to sell her phone for bus fare, that was ridiculous. Updating a will? That was business. I showered. Changed into sweatpants. Ordered room service, something small and overpriced just because I could. While I waited, I pulled out the folder Martin had given me and reread the changes. The house Frank and I paid off after 30 years. The farmland my father left me. The investment account we built penny by penny. My personal savings. All redirected to Silver Harbor Foundation. An organization that actually protects seniors from being treated like disposable baggage. My stomach tightened, not with regret, but with gravity. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was official. When my food arrived, I tipped the delivery guy extra. He thanked me twice. Looked me in the eye when he did it. Funny how small respect can feel so big after someone tries to shrink you. Around 9, my phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail notification. I hesitated before playing it. Caleb's voice came through strained, tight. Mom, what are you doing? Martin Hayes called. He said you've updated your will. Completely? You can't just make decisions like that without talking to us. Without talking to us. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just shocked that I'd acted without permission. I let the voicemail finish. Then I replayed one sentence in my head. You can't just make decisions like that. I sat back against the headboard and stared at the ceiling. For 41 years, I'd made decisions with Frank. For 38 years, I'd made decisions with Caleb in mind. Now I'd made one for myself. And suddenly that was the problem. Another text came in. Mom, we didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. There it was. The word people use when they want your pain to shrink so their guilt feels smaller. Overreacting. I thought about Gate C18. About the airline agent's apologetic eyes. About Brianna sipping her latte while telling me to figure it out. If that was an overreaction, I'd hate to see what they considered serious. I turned off my phone. Not on silent. Off. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the river reflecting city lights. Frank used to say, "You teach people how to treat you." For years, I'd taught Caleb that I would always absorb the inconvenience. Always smooth things over. always understand. Not anymore. I crawled into bed that night not as a stranded old woman, but as someone who had just drawn a boundary for the first time in her life. And boundaries? They make people uncomfortable. Especially the ones who benefited from you not having any. The next morning, the real fallout would begin. Because Caleb wasn't just shocked. He was scared. And when people get scared about money, they show you exactly who they are. What he said to me the next day. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice. I turned my phone back on the next morning while sitting in the hotel lobby with a cup of burnt coffee and a blueberry muffin I didn't even want. 32 notifications. Missed calls. Texts. 2 voicemails from Caleb. 1 from Brianna. No, are you safe? No, did you get home? Just urgency. I took a slow breath and hit play on the newest voicemail. Mom, Caleb's voice came through sharp this time, not strained, sharp. Martin sent over the official notice. You removed us from everything? The house? The land? The investment accounts? After everything we've done? I blinked. After everything they've done? I let the message continue. You can't just cut us out like that. That's not how family works. That line right there. That's not how family works. I almost admired the confidence. Family works however the person with the signature says it works. My phone buzzed again before I could even set it down. Incoming call. Caleb. This time, I answered. Good morning, I said calmly. There was a pause. Like he hadn't expected me to pick up. Mom, what is going on? He demanded. I'm having breakfast, I replied. What's going on with you? This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. He exhaled hard into the phone. I could practically see him pacing. Martin says you've transferred the house into a charitable trust. You froze the joint account we used for the kids' tuition. You even updated your power of attorney. Yes. You didn't even talk to us. I took a sip of coffee. You didn't talk to me before canceling my return ticket. Silence. Then, that wasn't the same thing. Explain how. Another pause. We just thought you'd want to stay longer. You've got flexibility. And my suitcase? He didn't answer. Brianna said you'd ship it, he muttered finally. Ship it where, Caleb? You didn't book me anywhere. His voice rose. You're twisting this. No, I said evenly. I'm remembering it. There's a difference. He shifted gears. Mom, look. If this is about money, we can figure something out. You don't have to give everything away to strangers. Strangers. The word hung there. You left me at an airport, I said quietly. The strangers were kinder. He didn't like that. You're blowing this out of proportion. There it is again. What? Overreacting. Blowing it out of proportion. You keep trying to shrink what you did so it doesn't look ugly. He snapped. Okay, fine. Maybe it wasn't handled perfectly. But cutting us out completely? That's extreme. Extreme, I repeated softly. You know what's extreme? Watching your only child walk away without looking back. I could hear Brianna in the background now. Whispering. Probably coaching. Caleb lowered his voice. The house was supposed to stay in the family. Family keeps each other safe, I said. Family doesn't make contingency plans that exclude one member. He tried another tactic. What about the kids? You're punishing them. I felt that one land. He knew it would. I love my grandkids, I said. That hasn't changed. Then why would you do this to them? I'm not doing anything to them. I'm doing something for myself. That's selfish. I laughed once. Not mean. Just tired. I sold my anniversary band to help pay for a trip I wasn't invited back from. Silence again. He hadn't known that. Or maybe he had. I didn't realize you'd sold jewelry, he said carefully. You didn't ask. That's when his tone shifted completely. Fear crept in. Mom, how serious are you about this? As serious as the notary stamp, I replied. Another long pause. Then he said something that told me everything I needed to know. At least let us keep the back property. The garden. The kids helped plant it. Ah. There it was. Land. I stared at the lobby chandelier for a moment before answering. That land will be used to build something meaningful. For who? For women who don't have sons to rely on. His voice tightened. So that's it? You're replacing us? No, I said. I'm protecting myself. He didn't know what to do with that. People who are used to access don't handle boundaries well. Finally, he muttered, we need time to process this. I already processed it, I replied. Can we at least come see you? There it was. Access again. I'm not home, I said. Where are you? Somewhere I won't be left behind. I ended the call before he could respond. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't cracked. That surprised me more than anything. Because the old me? She would have folded by now. Would have said, let's talk this through. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a reveal. And Caleb had just shown me that his panic wasn't about my feelings. It was about inheritance. What he did next, though. That's when the gloves really came off. And when Brianna decided to step in directly. That's when things got interesting. It didn't even take 24 hours. By mid-afternoon, my phone lit up again. Not Caleb this time. Brianna. I stared at her name on the screen for a long second before answering. If Caleb was panic, Brianna was strategy. Hello? I said evenly. Her voice came smooth. Controlled. The same tone she used when correcting a waiter who got her order wrong. Eleanor, I think we need to clear the air. Not Mom. Eleanor. That was new. I'm breathing fine, I replied. But go ahead. A pause. Probably recalculating. Look, what happened at the airport clearly hurt your feelings. Hurt my feelings. Like someone forgot my birthday. You think that's what this is? I asked. I think, she continued, ignoring the question, that you've made a very emotional decision while you're still grieving. And I don't want you doing something permanent based on temporary pain. There it was. The classic move. You're too emotional to be taken seriously. I updated my will in a law office, I said calmly. Not in the parking lot. You gave everything away, she snapped, the polish slipping. Do you understand what that does to our family's future? Our family's future. Interesting choice of words. Explain that to me, I said. The house was supposed to be Caleb's. The land behind it? That's value, Eleanor. Real value. Property prices are climbing. We were counting on that stability. Counting on it. Like it was already theirs. I leaned back in the hotel chair and crossed my legs. You were counting on something that wasn't yours. It was always going to be. Until it wasn't. She exhaled sharply. I could almost see her pacing across her kitchen tile. You're punishing us. No, I said quietly. I'm responding. For what? A misunderstanding? You told me to sell my phone for bus fare. That was a joke. It wasn't funny. Silence. Then she switched tactics. Okay. Fine. Maybe it came out wrong. But we didn't abandon you. You boarded a plane without me. You're an adult. Yes, I agreed. I am. That one seemed to land. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. You've always been independent. Strong. We thought you'd handle it. Ah. There it was. They assumed I'd absorb it. Like always. You thought I'd tolerate it, I corrected. Another silence. Then, softly, you're blowing up decades of family over one bad day. I let that sit. One bad day, I repeated. You think that's what this was? Because here's the truth she didn't want to hear. The airport wasn't the first time I felt pushed to the side. It wasn't the first time plans were made without me. It wasn't the first time I chipped in financially and got treated like an afterthought. It was just the loudest. You've been slowly phasing me out for years, I said evenly. Shorter visits. Fewer calls. Decisions made after the fact. That's not fair, she shot back. Neither was Gate C-18. She went quiet again. Then came the real reason she'd called. What exactly did you give that foundation? Everything, I replied. All of it? Yes. The farmland too? Yes. Her voice tightened. Do you have any idea what that's worth? More than a round-trip ticket, apparently. That did it. You're being spiteful, she snapped. No, I said softly. I'm being clear. She tried one last angle. At least leave something for the kids. A trust. A college fund. I paused. Not because I was reconsidering. But because I wanted her to understand this next sentence. The children will inherit whatever kind of character you and Caleb teach them, I said. Money doesn't fix that. That hit. I could hear her breathing shift. You're making a mistake, she whispered. No, I said. I made a correction. She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I did something that surprised even me. I smiled. Because for the first time since Frank passed, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. But what Brianna didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't going back to the house at all. Not to argue. Not to negotiate. Not even to collect everything. I had already made arrangements. And when Caleb came home from Florida and found what was waiting for him on the kitchen counter, that's when reality would really set in. Because being cut out of a will is one thing. Losing access entirely? That's another story. And trust me, they were about to learn the difference. While Caleb and Brianna were somewhere in Florida posting beach selfies with captions about family time and much-needed reset, I was back in Tennessee making moves they wouldn't see coming. I didn't go home right away. I gave myself 2 days. 2 quiet mornings in that hotel by the river. 2 nights of sleeping without tension in my chest. 2 days of thinking clearly without someone else's voice crowding my head. On the 3rd morning, I called a moving company from 2 counties over. Not local. I didn't need gossip traveling faster than truth. Small load, I told the man on the phone. Mostly sentimental items. He said they could meet me Tuesday at 9 a.m. Tuesday was perfect. Caleb would still be out of town. When I pulled into my driveway that morning, the house looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just saw it differently now. The shutters needed paint. The porch steps sagged a little. Wind chimes Frank hung years ago clinked softly in the breeze. I sat in the car for a minute before getting out. This house had held everything: birthday parties, slammed doors during teenage arguments, Christmas mornings, quiet Sunday afternoons with football humming in the background. It had also held the last breath of my husband. And the slow fading of my importance. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The silence didn't hurt this time. It just echoed. The movers arrived right on time. Two polite young men who called me ma'am and didn't ask unnecessary questions. "I'll show you what's coming with me," I said. Frank's recliner, the one molded to his back after decades of use. Our wedding album. A box of old letters we wrote to each other before cell phones replaced handwriting. My mother's quilt. A small cedar chest with keepsakes. And a framed photo of Frank laughing on our 25th anniversary. That was it. Not the dining room table we paid off in installments. Not the china set. Not the big sectional couch Caleb picked out years ago when he convinced us to modernize. Just the pieces that still felt like mine. While they loaded the truck, I walked slowly through each room. The kitchen where I'd baked every birthday cake from scratch. The hallway where Frank fell that morning. Caleb's old bedroom, still faintly smelling like dust and time. I didn't cry. I had already done my crying. Instead, I walked to the kitchen counter and placed a sealed envelope near the fruit bowl. Inside was a simple note. Don't call. Don't argue. Don't negotiate. I am exactly where I need to be. No signature. He'd know. Before leaving, I made one more call. To Martin. The house paperwork? I asked. Filed, he confirmed. The charitable trust transfer is complete. Effective immediately. So legally. They no longer have claim to it. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Good. When the movers finished, I handed them the spare key. Lock up behind you, I said. Then I walked down the driveway without looking back. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about letting go. If you turn around, your heart might try to follow. The drive to my new place took less than 2 hours. A modest independent living community just outside the city. Clean. Bright. No smell of antiseptic. No sad beige walls. The sign out front read, Willow Ridge Living. Frank and I toured it once years ago just in case. He'd joked about whether they had decent pudding. I used to swear I'd never leave my house. Funny how life humbles you. When I walked into the lobby, the woman at the front desk smiled warmly. Mrs. Turner? We've been expecting you. Not an afterthought. Not a burden. Expected. My chair had already been placed near a window in my new apartment. My boxes stacked neatly by the wall. A welcome basket sat on the kitchen counter, crackers, jam, tea bags. Simple. But intentional. That night, I sat in Frank's recliner by the window and watched the sunset over a courtyard full of strangers who didn't know my history. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. Caleb and Brianna would be landing back in Tennessee the next day. They'd drive home from the airport, probably arguing about how to handle me. They'd unlock the front door expecting things to be exactly how they left them. But they weren't prepared for what they were about to find. Because being written out of a will? That's paperwork. Walking into a house that no longer belongs to you? That's reality. And reality was about to hit them harder than any legal document ever could. Caleb didn't call when they landed. That told me one of two things. Either he was still mad, or he hadn't made it home yet. I was sitting in the common lounge at Willow Ridge Living, pretending to read a paperback while watching the courtyard fountain ripple in the late afternoon sun. A couple of residents were playing cards nearby. Someone down the hall was laughing at a TV game show. Normal life. Peaceful life. My phone buzzed at 4:17 p.m. Caleb. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Hello. His voice wasn't sharp this time. It was shaken. Mom, what did you do? I kept my tone steady. You'll need to be more specific. The house, he snapped. We just got here. The locks don't work. I had them changed. Changed? Why would you change the locks on your own house? It's not my house anymore. Silence. Then, slower, like he was trying to process something too big to swallow in one bite. What does that mean? It means the property is now under the Silver Harbor Trust. You can't just. I can, I said gently. And I did. In the background, I could hear Brianna's voice rising. Muffled at first. Then clearer. Ask her about the land. The back lot. Caleb lowered the phone for a second. There was arguing. Fast, heated whispers. Then he came back on. You gave the whole thing away? Without even talking to us? I left you a note. That's not talking. No, I agreed. It's clarity. His breathing got heavier. What are we supposed to do? There it was. Not, are you okay? Not, where are you staying? What are we supposed to do? I imagine, I said carefully, you'll need to make other arrangements. Mom, we've been planning around that house for years. That was your mistake. He went quiet. I could picture him standing on the porch. Suitcases at his feet. Brianna pacing behind him in those expensive sandals she always wore to travel. The same porch where he used to wait for the school bus. The same porch where Frank once taught him how to tie a tie before prom. It was supposed to stay in the family, he muttered. Family stays together, I replied. That's not fair. Neither was what you did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The weight of it was enough. Where are you? He asked finally. Safe. Mom. Caleb. He sighed. The kind of sigh grown men make when they realize something irreversible has happened. Are you really not coming back? No. Another pause. Are you at least comfortable? That question surprised me. Yes, I said honestly. Very. There was a long stretch of silence between us. Then Brianna grabbed the phone. Eleanor, this is insane, she snapped. We have kids. We have responsibilities. You just appended everything. I adjusted my estate, I corrected. You appended everything at the airport. That was one day. It was a decision. She exhaled sharply. You're being dramatic. I'm being done. That one landed. I heard her whisper something to Caleb, probably not kind. Then Caleb came back on the line. Mom, please. Just reconsider the land. The garden. The kids helped plant that. I stared out the window at the courtyard fountain. You never once asked me to help plant it, I said softly. That's not the point. It is to me. He didn't have a response for that. Because this wasn't about tomatoes or flowers. It was about ownership. And respect. The trust plans to use the back acreage for community housing and therapeutic gardening programs, I added. For seniors who don't have family to rely on. That's a slap in the face, Brianna said in the background. No, I replied calmly. It's a mirror. Silence again. Heavy now. You really won't even talk about this in person? Caleb asked. I just did. And before he could argue again, I ended the call. My hand didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. Instead, something unexpected happened. Relief. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't hoping to be included. I wasn't shrinking myself to keep peace. That evening at dinner, the staff at Willow Ridge called my name when it was time to eat. Eleanor, your table's ready. My table. My seat. I walked into the dining room, and a woman with silver curls waved me over. Saved you a spot, she said. Simple words. But powerful. Meanwhile, back on that porch I used to sweep every Saturday morning, Caleb and Brianna were standing outside a house they thought was theirs. And they were finally learning something I'd understood for weeks now. Entitlement doesn't unlock doors. Respect does. But what happened the next morning? That's when things escalated beyond phone calls and hurt feelings. Because Caleb didn't just show up at the house. He showed up somewhere else. And he wasn't ready for what he saw. The next morning, I was halfway through a watercolor class when the front desk assistant tapped gently on the studio door. Eleanor, she whispered. There's someone here asking for you. I didn't need to guess. Caleb had always hated loose ends. I set my brush down carefully and wiped my hands on a paper towel. The other residents pretended not to stare, but curiosity travels fast in shared spaces. When I stepped into the lobby of Willow Ridge Living, there he was. My son. Standing stiffly near the welcome desk, hands shoved into his pockets, jaw tight. He looked tired. Not from travel. From reality. For a split second, I saw the little boy who used to wait for me after school with grass stains on his jeans. Then I saw the man who walked through airport security without looking back. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. Caleb. He glanced around the lobby. The sunlight pouring through the big windows. The clean floors. The residents chatting nearby. You're here? He asked. Yes. You moved here? Yes. His eyes scanned the place again, like he was trying to find something wrong with it. Something temporary. You didn't tell us. You didn't tell me about the one-way ticket. That shut him up for a second. He rubbed the back of his neck. Can we talk somewhere private? I nodded toward a small sitting area by the window. We sat across from each other, a low table between us. Neutral ground. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he began. I messed up. That surprised me. But I stayed quiet. I should have handled the airport thing better, he continued. It wasn't supposed to feel like that. Like what? I asked calmly. Like we were abandoning you. I held his gaze. It didn't feel like abandonment, Caleb. It was abandonment. He winced. That's not how I saw it. I know. He leaned forward. We thought you'd be okay. You're strong. You've always handled things. There it was again. The assumption that strength means you don't need care. You didn't ask if I'd be okay, I said. You decided I would be. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't think you'd take it this far, he admitted. That's because you didn't think I would do anything. Silence. He looked around again. This place, is this permanent? Yes. You're not coming back to the house? It's not my house anymore. His jaw tightened. You really gave it all away. Yes. Why? He demanded, frustration rising again. Why not just talk to us first? Because talking requires listening, I replied. And you weren't. He ran a hand through his hair. You could have at least left something. The land. A portion of it. Why? For the family. For the future. I tilted my head slightly. Did you picture me in that future? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. You assumed I'd just fade, I said softly. That I'd sit in that house alone until it was convenient. That's not fair, he protested weakly. Isn't it? He didn't answer. Instead, he tried one more angle. The kids miss you. I miss them too. Then why are you doing this? I folded my hands in my lap. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. I'm doing this because I deserve to feel safe. Respected. Considered. You were respected. At the airport? He flinched. That was one mistake. No, I corrected gently. It was the clearest one. A long pause stretched between us. Finally, he asked quietly, is there anything we can do to fix this? That question hung heavy. Because this wasn't about paperwork anymore. It was about trust. And trust doesn't reset with apologies. You can start by understanding something, I said. I am not your safety net. I am not your retirement plan. I am not a placeholder until inheritance kicks in. He swallowed. I never thought of you like that. You didn't have to, I replied. Your actions did it for you. His shoulders slumped. For the first time since this started, he looked smaller. Are you happy here? He asked after a moment. I glanced around the lobby. A couple laughing over coffee. The receptionist smiling at a delivery driver. Sunlight warming the floor. Yes, I said honestly. I am. He nodded slowly. I didn't expect that. I know. He stood up, uncertain. So, what now? Now, I said calmly, you go home. You figure out your own path. And you decide what kind of son you want to be moving forward. He looked at me carefully. Am I still your son? That one hit somewhere deep. You'll always be my son, I said. But that doesn't mean you're entitled to my future. He didn't argue with that. He just nodded. And for the first time since Gate C18, he didn't try to convince me I was wrong. He walked toward the door, then paused. I really didn't think you'd go through with it, he admitted quietly. I know, I said. After he left, I sat there for a long time. Not shaking. Not crying. Just breathing. Because what Caleb finally understood that morning, what Brianna still didn't, was this. I wasn't bluffing. And I wasn't bitter. I was done accepting less than I deserved. But here's the twist neither of them saw coming. The house wasn't the only thing that had changed hands. And when they found out what was happening to that land behind it, that's when the real shock would hit. 3 weeks after Caleb showed up at Willow Ridge, the construction trucks rolled onto the back acreage of what used to be my property. I didn't have to drive by to know. Martin kept me updated. It's official, he told me over the phone. Silver Harbor broke ground this morning. I stepped out onto the courtyard patio with my coffee and let that settle in. Groundbreaking. On land Caleb once called his future investment. On soil Brianna used to photograph for social media captions about our little homestead dreams. Only now, the dream belonged to someone else. The plan was simple but powerful: small transitional cottages for seniors who'd been financially exploited or quietly pushed aside by their families. A therapeutic garden program run by licensed counselors. Community dinners. Legal workshops. Not flashy, but meaningful. The back lot, the one Caleb begged to keep because the kids helped plant tomatoes there, would become a place where abandoned women learned how to grow something again. I didn't feel spite. I felt alignment. 2 days later, Caleb called again. His tone was different this time. Less anger. More disbelief. "Mom, they're building on the land." "Yes." "They put up signage. Silver Harbor Transitional Housing. There's a rendering posted. I've seen it. They're tearing up the garden." I took a slow breath. "They're expanding it." "That's not what I mean." "I know." He was quiet for a long moment. "The neighbors are talking. People always do. They're saying we lost the house." "You did." He exhaled sharply. "You didn't have to make it public." "I didn't. Paperwork is private. Construction is visible." "That wasn't cruelty. That was fact." "You couldn't have just sold it quietly?" he pressed. "And let you tell people I downsized by choice?" I asked gently. He didn't answer. Because we both knew that's exactly what would have happened. Narratives are powerful. Especially when pride is involved. "Brianna's furious," he admitted. "I'm not surprised. She says you did this to embarrass us." "I did this to protect myself." He hesitated before speaking again. "She keeps asking how you could choose strangers over your own family." That one deserved a careful answer. "I didn't choose strangers over family," I said slowly. "I chose dignity over entitlement." Silence. Then, quieter, "Do you really think that's how we saw you?" "I don't think you saw me at all." That one lingered between us. He shifted topics. "The trust board reached out about converting the house into administrative offices and counseling rooms." "Yes." "They asked if we wanted to attend the opening ceremony." That surprised me. "They invited you?" "They said it was open to community members." I smiled slightly. "That's generous." "Are you going?" he asked. "Yes." Another pause. "Can we come?" I leaned back in my chair and watched a pair of sparrows hop along the courtyard railing. "You can attend as guests," I said. "Like everyone else." The distinction mattered. Not owners. Not heirs. Guests. He swallowed that. "Mom, do you hate us?" There it was. The question underneath all the others. "No," I said honestly. "If I hated you, I would have fought. I would have screamed. I would have dragged this out." "Then what is this?" "This," I replied calmly, "is a boundary." He didn't argue. He just breathed. "I never thought you'd walk away," he admitted quietly. "I never thought I'd have to." That was the truth neither of us could dodge. After we hung up, I stayed outside for a while. Helen, the silver-curled woman who'd saved me a seat on my first night, walked over with her tea. "That your son again?" she asked gently. "Yes." "He adjusting?" Slowly. She nodded knowingly. People don't like it when the quiet ones finally speak up. I laughed softly. That's exactly what this was. I hadn't become cruel. I'd become clear. The groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for Saturday morning. Local press would be there. Community leaders. Donors. And apparently, my son and daughter-in-law. But what Caleb didn't know, what Brianna definitely didn't know, was that Silver Harbor had asked me to say a few words. Nothing dramatic. Just a short statement about why I chose to fund the project. They wanted to frame it as a story of empowerment, second chances, community support. They didn't know the full story. They didn't need to. But when I stepped up to that microphone on land Caleb once assumed was his, and looked out at a crowd that included him, I knew something important would happen. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from arguing. Sometimes it comes from telling the truth calmly, in public. And once that truth was spoken out loud, there would be no rewriting it. Saturday morning came bright and warm. The kind of Tennessee sunshine that makes everything look hopeful, even places that used to hold heartbreak. I hadn't stood on that property since the movers loaded Frank's recliner into the truck. Now, a white event tent covered what used to be our back garden. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows. A banner stretched across the front that read, Silver Harbor Community Initiative, breaking ground for dignity. Dignity. That word alone was worth everything I'd signed away. Helen insisted on coming with me. If you're giving a speech, she said, you need moral support and someone to clap louder than necessary. We arrived early. A few board members greeted me warmly. Handshakes. Smiles. Gratitude. Mrs. Turner, your generosity is changing lives, one of them said. I smiled politely. They didn't know this wasn't generosity. It was self-respect. I spotted Caleb before he saw me. He stood near the edge of the tent with Brianna, both dressed like they were attending a networking brunch instead of the symbolic demolition of their expectations. She looked polished. He looked uneasy. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod. Not warm. Not cold. Just aware. The program began with introductions. A short overview of Silver Harbor's mission. A local councilwoman spoke about the growing need for elder advocacy. Then they called my name. Eleanor Turner, whose remarkable contribution made this expansion possible. Applause filled the tent. I stood slowly, smoothing my blouse, and walked to the microphone. The land behind me was already marked with bright spray paint, outlines for future cottages and garden beds. For a split second, memories tried to creep in. Frank building a raised planter box. Caleb chasing a soccer ball across the yard. Sunday afternoons that felt permanent. But permanence is a myth. I leaned into the microphone. My name is Eleanor Turner, I began. Not mom. Not widow. Eleanor. I didn't plan to be standing here this year, I continued. Life changed quickly for me. My husband passed away after 41 years of marriage. The crowd quieted. We built a home together. A life. And like many people, I assumed that what we built would pass naturally to the next generation. I saw Caleb shift in his seat. I didn't look at him directly. But I learned something important, I said. Inheritance is more than property. It's about values. About how we treat one another. A breeze lifted the edge of the tent fabric. When you reach a certain age, people start making assumptions about you, I continued. They assume you'll accept less. That you'll shrink quietly. That you won't disrupt expectations. A few heads nodded in the audience. I decided I wasn't ready to shrink. That earned a small ripple of laughter. I chose to invest in something that protects people who've been overlooked. People who deserve safety. Respect. A voice. I paused. The words weren't angry. They were steady. This land will now hold homes for seniors who thought they had nowhere else to go. It will grow gardens tended by hands that still matter. It will offer legal guidance to those who need protection. I let my gaze drift, finally landing briefly on Caleb. I hope it stands as a reminder, I said gently, that dignity doesn't expire. And neither does courage. Applause rose again. Stronger this time. I stepped back from the microphone and felt something shift inside me. Not triumph. Not revenge. Completion. When the ceremony ended, people approached to shake my hand. "You're inspiring," one woman said. "You're brave," another added. I thanked them politely. Then Caleb approached. Alone. Brianna lingered behind him, arms folded tight. "You didn't have to make it sound like that," he said quietly. "Like what?" I asked. "Like he trailed off. "I didn't name anyone," I replied. "That's the problem," he said softly. "Everyone knows." I studied his face. "I didn't do this to humiliate you," I said. "If you feel exposed, ask yourself why." He didn't argue. He just looked out at the marked soil where bulldozers would soon reshape everything. "I never thought this would be the ending," he admitted. "It's not," I said gently. "It's just a new chapter." "For who?" "For me." He nodded slowly. Behind him, Brianna turned and walked toward the parking lot without saying goodbye. That told me all I needed to know. As the crowd thinned, Helen looped her arm through mine. "You were magnificent," she whispered. I smiled. But here's the part no one in that tent realized. The speech wasn't the final move. It was simply the public acknowledgement of what had already happened. Because the real transformation wasn't the land. It wasn't the house. It was me. And in the weeks that followed, something unexpected would happen. Not anger. Not lawsuits. Not sabotage. Something quieter. Something harder to face. Regret. And when Caleb came back one last time, it wouldn't be about property. It would be about something money can't buy back. Regret doesn't show up loud. It doesn't kick the door in or demand attention. It lingers. It softens voices. Slows footsteps. Makes people sit with things they used to outrun. About a month after the groundbreaking ceremony, Caleb came back to Willow Ridge. Alone. No Brianna. That alone told me something had shifted. I was in the courtyard, trimming a small herb plant the gardening club had assigned to me, when I saw him standing near the fountain. He looked different. Not polished. Not defensive. Just tired. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Hi, Caleb." He glanced around at the courtyard, at the residents chatting on benches, at the maintenance man adjusting a sprinkler head. "You seem settled," he said. "I am." He nodded slowly, then sat down across from me at the small patio table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. No rehearsed speeches this time. No strategy. Just air between us. "I've been thinking," he finally said. "That's usually a good start." He gave a small, humorless smile. "I keep replaying the airport in my head." I didn't respond. "I remember you standing there," he continued. "Holding your purse. You looked confused. I told myself you'd be fine. That you were strong." "You keep using that word," I said gently. He looked at his hands. "I think I used it as an excuse." That was new. "I didn't want to deal with your grief," he admitted. "It was heavy. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I told myself you could handle it." I studied his face. This wasn't panic. This wasn't entitlement. This was reflection. "Grief isn't something you hand off," I said quietly. It's something you stand next to. He swallowed. I wasn't standing next to you, he said. No. A breeze passed between us. Somewhere inside the building, a door closed softly. Brianna thinks you've overreacted, he added. I know. She says parents shouldn't make decisions that punish their kids. I tilted my head slightly. And what do you think? He didn't hesitate this time. I think I hurt you. And instead of fixing it, I made it worse. There it was. Ownership. Not perfect. Not poetic. But real. I didn't do this to punish you, I said calmly. I did it because I needed to know I wasn't dependent on someone who saw me as optional. I never saw you as optional, he said quickly. You made me feel that way. He nodded slowly. I see that now. We sat there in silence again. Not the cold kind. Not the defensive kind. Just space. I drove by the house yesterday, he admitted. I didn't react. The sign's up. The framing for the first cottages started. Yes. I stood there for a while, he continued. And for the first time I didn't feel angry. What did you feel? He took a long breath. I felt small. That word surprised me. Small how? Like I'd been thinking about money and property and future value, and you were thinking about dignity. I didn't say anything. He kept going. I told myself I was protecting my family's stability. But really, I was protecting my expectations. That was the most honest thing he'd said yet. And expectations, I said softly, can blind you. He nodded. I don't expect you to change anything back, he added quickly. I'm not here for that. That mattered. Then why are you here? I asked. He looked up at me finally. Because I don't want the last clear memory you have of me to be that airport. My chest tightened just slightly. That won't be the last memory, I said. But it will always be one of them. He accepted that. I can't undo it, he said. But I can own it. We sat quietly for a moment longer. Then he asked something softer. Can I still come visit? That question held no demand. No expectation of inheritance. Just relationship. Yes, I said. But I need you to understand something, I added. I'm listening. I won't shrink again to make you comfortable. He nodded immediately. I wouldn't ask you to. That was the first time I believed him. He stood up slowly. I'll tell the kids you said hi, he said. Tell them I love them. I will. As he walked toward the exit, he turned once more. I'm sorry, Mom. Not defensive. Not pressured. Just simple. I know, I said. After he left, Helen wandered over with her tea. That one looked different, she observed. He is. Good different? Learning different. She smiled knowingly. Regret's a better teacher than pride. She wasn't wrong. But here's the truth no one tells you about forgiveness. It doesn't mean reversing your boundaries. It means releasing the bitterness without reopening the door the same way. Caleb could visit. He could rebuild something new. But the old structure, the one built on assumption and entitlement, that foundation was gone. And here's the twist neither he nor Brianna fully understood yet. The biggest inheritance I left behind wasn't the land. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. It was the example. And whether they'd follow it. That part was still being written. Time didn't rewind after that conversation. It didn't magically restore holidays or erase tension. What it did instead was something quieter. It adjusted. Caleb started visiting twice a month. Sometimes he came alone. Sometimes he brought the kids. The first time my granddaughter, Sophie, stepped into my apartment at Willow Ridge, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Grandma, this place smells like cookies." "That's because Mrs. Daughtry down the hall stress bakes," I said. "And we all benefit." Sophie laughed. That sound alone was worth every signature I'd put on those documents. Caleb stayed near the doorway that first visit, like he wasn't sure how permanent this version of me was. The apartment wasn't large, but it was mine. A bookshelf against one wall. Frank's old radio on the dresser. Fresh flowers from the courtyard garden in a mason jar. "You decorated fast," he said. "I didn't decorate, I corrected." I settled. "There's a difference." He noticed it. The kids explored the hallway, peeking into the common lounge where a few residents were working on a puzzle. "This isn't what I thought it would be," Caleb admitted quietly. "What did you think it would be?" "Lonely." I smiled slightly. "Lonely isn't about square footage." He nodded. Over the next few weeks, something subtle shifted. He stopped bringing up the house. Stopped mentioning property values. Stopped asking about paperwork. Instead, he asked about my gardening club. About Helen. About whether I was sleeping okay. The first time he asked, "Do you need anything?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was late. Still, late is better than never. Brianna didn't come at first. When she finally did, she was polite. Too polite. The kind of careful politeness people use when they don't fully agree but understand they can't win. She stood in my doorway and said, "It's nice here." "It is," I replied simply. We didn't revisit the past. Some bridges don't need more fire. They need distance. Meanwhile, construction on the Silver Harbor cottages moved fast. Framing turned into walls. Walls turned into small homes with front porches and flower boxes. One afternoon, Caleb asked if I wanted to drive by and see the progress together. That was new. We stood side by side on the sidewalk as workers installed windows in what would soon be someone's safe place. "It's weird," he said softly. "What is?" "I used to picture my kids running around this yard someday. And now?" He watched a volunteer group laying soil in fresh garden beds. "Now I see other families getting something they wouldn't have had." That was growth. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just real. "I was angry because I thought you were taking something from us," he admitted. "But you were giving something to someone else." "Yes. And I didn't know how to handle not being the priority." That was the most honest thing he'd said yet. "Children aren't meant to stay the priority forever," I said gently. "They're meant to become adults." He nodded. The opening of the first finished cottage happened in early spring. A small ribbon cutting. No big speeches this time. Just keys handed to a woman named Marlene, whose son had drained her savings and left her to couch surf until Silver Harbor intervened. When she hugged me, her hands trembled. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered. "You just did," I said. Caleb stood a few feet away, watching. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked thoughtful. Later that evening, he walked me back to my car. "I think I get it now," he said quietly. "Get what?" "You weren't trying to hurt us." "No. You were trying to show us something." I smiled. "What do you think I was showing you?" He thought for a long moment. "That love doesn't mean access," he said finally. "And respect isn't automatic." That was it. Not perfectly phrased, but understood. "I wish I'd learned it differently," he added. So do I. We stood there in the fading sunlight, no longer arguing about ownership. Just two adults recalibrating. But here's the truth about legacies. They aren't decided in wills. They're revealed in choices. And the final chapter of this story wasn't about money. It was about what happens years later, when grandchildren grow up watching how their parents treat their elders. Because the real inheritance? It wasn't land. It was behavior. And in the end, that's what determines whether history repeats itself. Or finally changes. A year later, the cottages were full. Not crowded. Not chaotic. Full of life. Wind chimes on porches. Raised garden beds blooming with tomatoes and lavender. Folding chairs pulled into small circles at sunset. Silver Harbor had become exactly what it was meant to be, a soft landing for people who'd once felt disposable. And I had become something I never expected at 72. At peace. Willow Ridge felt like home now. I had a routine. Tuesday watercolor classes. Thursday garden club. Sunday breakfast with Helen where we solved the world's problems over scrambled eggs. Caleb still visited. Not out of guilt anymore. Out of rhythm. He'd stop by after work sometimes, tie loosened, holding a bag of takeout. Thought you might be tired of cafeteria meatloaf, he'd say. I never was. But I appreciated the gesture. The kids started spending whole afternoons with me. Sophie loved helping in the community garden. Her little brother, Miles, had appointed himself official birdwatcher of the courtyard. One evening, while Sophie and I were planting herbs, she asked something that made time pause. Grandma, why don't you live in the big house anymore? Kids don't dance around questions. They go straight through them. I brushed soil from my hands. Because sometimes, I said carefully, grown-ups have to make choices to feel safe and respected. She tilted her head. Weren't you safe before? That question held no accusation. Just curiosity. I was comfortable, I replied. But that's not the same thing. She thought about that in the serious way only children can. Did Dad make you sad? I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said gently. But he learned from it. She nodded slowly, absorbing that. Is that why he says sorry more now? She asked. I smiled. Maybe. Across the courtyard, Caleb was helping Miles adjust a toy airplane. He looked up briefly, catching my eye. There was no tension there anymore. Just understanding. Later that night, after the kids left, Caleb stayed behind. He leaned against the kitchen counter while I washed 2 coffee mugs. I've been thinking about something, he said. That usually leads somewhere, I replied. He smiled faintly. I've started setting up a college fund for the kids. That's wise. That's not the point. He paused. I also started putting money aside for long-term care. For myself. I turned off the faucet and looked at him. Why? Because I don't ever want my kids to feel like I'm their obligation. That was it. That was the moment I knew the lesson had landed. I want them to want me around, he continued. Not feel trapped by me. I dried my hands slowly. That's a good legacy, I said. He nodded. I didn't understand that before. No, I agreed softly. You didn't. He looked around my apartment, the framed photo of Frank on the shelf, the thriving plants by the window, the stack of library books on the coffee table. Are you happy? He asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Are you? He considered that. I'm getting there. That was enough. When he left that night, I stood by the window for a while, watching the courtyard lights flicker on one by one. I thought about the airport. About gate C18. About standing there with no return ticket and a thin envelope of emergency cash. Back then, I thought I'd been left behind. Now I understood something different. I hadn't been left. I had been released. Released from expectations that didn't serve me. Released from shrinking to keep peace. Released from being someone else's safety net. The house was gone. The land had changed. The will had been rewritten. But the most important shift hadn't been legal. It had been personal. The real inheritance I left my family wasn't money or property. It was a blueprint. A quiet example that said, love your parents. But don't assume ownership of them. Care for your children. But don't build your future on their sacrifice. Respect doesn't come with age automatically. It comes with awareness. And boundaries aren't punishments. They're protection. The next morning, Sophie sent me a crayon drawing in the mail. It showed 3 little cottages with flowers outside, a big yellow sun overhead, and stick figures holding hands. At the top, she'd written, Grandma's garden. Not Grandma's old house. Not Grandma's money. Grandma's garden. And that's when I knew. The story hadn't ended in loss. It had ended in growth. And growth, unlike property, is something no one can take away.